Luis Severino shocked the baseball world on Thursday when he signed a 3-year, $67 million deal with the A's. What do we make of this contract and what does it mean for the rest of the market? I'll talk about it on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Luis Severino is A. What do we do with the team name? We don't at this point. I guess we're not calling them the Sacramento A's, and they're not the Las Vegas A's yet. They certainly aren't the Oakland Athletics anymore, but Severino has signed a contract that is the richest one in the history of the Athletics franchise. It's crazy stuff, and this is a contract that screams overpay to land your guy. That's what it is. Because if Luis Severino could earn this amount of money for any of the other 29 teams in baseball, or at least 25 of the other 29 teams in baseball, I think you take it from another team. This is the one team that will go to that number, and that's why he signs it. And I don't fault Luis Severino at all. Huge shout out to Sevy for an unbelievable season with the New York Mets and for cashing in. He deserves it. Gets an opt-out after the second year. So if he pitches well for 2 seasons, he can hit free agency again at the same age that Sean Manaea is right now, and he could still get paid one more time. He also could get traded. There's every chance that the Athletics might be added by the deadline. Severino, if he has a good season, then he could be on the move and he could find himself in a better place. But you take the money when it's in front of you, when it's this aggressive. Severino actually did better than the qualifying offer. I didn't think he would. He declined the qualifying offer from the Mets, which is at $21.05 million. I thought he would get more years for sure. But my projection at Just Baseball when we were doing the free agent contract projections was 3 years, $51 million. I thought he was going to get the Michael Wacha contract because Michael Wacha just signed an extension at the beginning of this offseason with the Royals, and it was for that dollar amount, $51 million. Guaranteed over 3 years. I think there's maybe a fourth year that can make it $72 million or something along those lines. But regardless, the guaranteed portion of that contract was $17 million per, the exact same total that Frankie Montas got per season. And I thought that was going to be the deal that Sevy got, something in that $17, $18 million range. And I did think he would get 3 years. I thought there was even an outside chance he might get 4 years just because of his age, only being 30 years old going into his age 31 season. But instead, he gets $22 million in change. That's a lot of money. And the Mets were reportedly in the mix on Sevy. They wanted to bring him back potentially at a specific price. My guess is that price on a per-year basis was probably close to what they just gave Frankie Montas, but maybe over more years. Maybe the Mets would have given him $17 million over a 4-year deal. Though I guess if they went to that degree, who knows? Sevy might have preferred that contract to get more guaranteed money overall and to return to the Mets. Instead, though, he is betting on himself here. He is taking the highest AAV possible, and that's a level that I agree with the Mets at not going to. I don't think that you can afford to drop $22+ million on Severino per year when you have some bigger fish to fry in the market in Juan Soto. But also, if you're going to extend to that level, you probably want to give that offer to Sean Manaea rather than Severino, because Manaea clearly proved to be the better pitcher of the two this past season. What he figured out with that Chris Sale arm slot gives you optimism that he can consistently be a frontline guy. Severino, he was really good. Don't get me wrong. 180+ innings, solid in the playoffs. I think each time it was 3 runs allowed, but he gave you innings in the postseason. He was really good. I think ultimately with Luis Severino, long-term, as this new version of what he has become, adding that sinker to his arsenal, I think he is a pitcher that's going to be a really good 3 for a long time. That's what I think. I think he can eat innings. I just don't know if he is a frontline number 1 or number 2. Now, I guess you have to throw those numbers out at times if you are thinking under the mindset of David Stearns, because I don't think he is that rigid on I need an ace. And I think we're going to see that with how they attack this market. I think all he cares about is getting starting pitchers that he's confident he can hand the ball to every 5th or every 6th day that can be effective and can give you innings. I think innings is what they care about more, effective innings, not necessarily I want to pitch Patrick Corbin because he gives me innings and it's going to be an ERA over 5, or even potentially a Kyle Gibson or a Lance Lynn, who we'll talk about more in the next segment. I think it's a matter of finding high upside innings, guys that you believe that you can get a lot out of, guys that have a certain level of upside. But I don't think he is as rigid as saying, I need to get an ace in this market. With that said, the Mets showed some interest in bringing back Sevy. I imagine they'd be interested in bringing back Sean Manaea. Sean Manaea apparently got an aggressive offer from the A's as well. But instead of going back to his former team, he probably wanted to a little bit further on in his career than Severino is, and also probably with a healthier market. He wants to likely sign with a contender on a good contract. And I think he is in a position, Sean Manaea is, to get an average annual value close to what Severino just got for at least the same amount of years on a really good team, and potentially for more years or more money over a 3-year deal. So the question is, now that the Mets have lost Luis Severino, are they also about to lose Sean Manaea? I want to talk about that in the next segment. Also, just an overall look at the market. So we'll go into that in just a minute. First, though, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And Game Time Picks is the feature they have that'll make it easier to get tickets for your favorite live events, because they're going to filter out the fluff and show you only the best possible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. You see the best deals there. You can buy tickets in a matter of seconds. You find what you like. You can view your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And you can check out so quickly, less than a minute. You could have tickets. You could be walking right back into the arena or walking towards the arena. Get your tickets on the way. You don't even have to prepare ahead of time. There's going to be some tickets there for you. Down the Game Time app, create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. So today, I was going back and forth with the insiders talking about Luis Severino. Had a lot of questions about the comp pick attached to Sevy. I think I mentioned in the last segment, but again, for any of the Mets free agents that got a qualifying offer, so Severino, Sean Manaea, and Pete Alonso, the compensation is the same across the board, regardless of the contract they sign, the quality of the player, because the Mets are a luxury tax team. Luxury tax teams get their compensation picks after the 4th round. So it's a pick sandwich between the 4th and the 5th round. If the Mets don't sign Manaea or Alonso, they'll have 3 of those picks, and they will get the slot value attached to each of those picks, which means they'll have more money to spend in this draft. They do lose a 2nd and a 5th round pick because they signed Juan Soto or any other qualifying offer free agents that aren't their own. This is a way now to get some of that draft pick capital back. But again, if you want to be a Locked On Mets insider and be able to text me back and forth as these moves are getting made, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so now let's talk about Sean Manaea. If this is the market for Severino, what's the market for Manaea? He's coming off a better season. There is, I think, more hope that he can be a frontline starting pitcher. He could be your ace potentially. If you're the Baltimore Orioles and maybe you don't think that you are going to be able to meet the price for a Burns or a Fried, you could look at Sean Manaea and say, yeah, that's potentially our ace next year. Now, they have Grayson Rodriguez, a young up-and-coming pitcher that might reach ace status at some point, but Sean Manaea is a very good option for the front of their rotation. And there's a lot of teams like that that are probably in the market for pitching and looking at the tier below that top tier. I think Sean Manaea, along with Jack Flaherty and maybe Nathan Eovaldi, are all in that group. Nick Pivetta is as well, but I think Nick Pivetta, the case for him is purely stuff-based. The results haven't quite been there the same way they were for Flaherty and Manaea this past year and Eovaldi over a number of years. Pivetta is one of these analytics darlings, but he got a qualifying offer attached. So I don't know. I don't know if he is going to get real frontline money, but again, I wouldn't be surprised since he turned down that qualifying offer and a similar boat to Luis Severino, where some thought, man, Sevy's really turning it down. Could Pivetta get $20 million per year over a 3-year deal? Could he get Kikuchi money, which was $63 million over 3 years? I think it's possible. I really do. So it just shows you the state of that market where you're either all in on the top guys, and if you're Corbin Burnes and Max Fried, you're setting your price and you're expecting to get it when you see some of these other deals signed. That the question is going to be, are teams willing to go to the 7 years that those two pitchers would probably want at a dollar amount that you might think would start with a 3 when it comes to $30 million plus? We'll see. We'll see what the market dictates on those guys. But Andy Martino has been really on top of the idea that the Mets aren't going to be in that market. Joel Sherman also talked about the Mets not being in that market for Burnes or Fried. So I think the hope is you get Sean Manaea back because he is, if not the best pitcher of that grouping, you might want to call Flaherty the best pitcher. Maybe like Eovaldi's track record. Regardless, I think Manaea showed something with the Mets. It was such a great fit, not only just from on the field, but off the field. I think there is motivation on each side to potentially have a reunion here. But Sean Manaea could price himself out of the Mets market, just like Luis Severino did. And I think David Stern's philosophy might be, let's find the next Sean Manaea, the next Luis Severino, as they're trying with Frankie Montas, instead of bringing those guys back and paying them a premium for the career year they had in your uniform. When Luis Severino signed, my first thought is Sean Manaea is getting $100 million. He's getting a 9-figure deal. Now, how did I get to that number? I think for one, if Sevy's get an average annual value of 22 and change, is it outside the realm of possibility that Sean Manaea can get $25 million per? And if Sevy's getting 3 years, even though he's younger, coming off the season that Manaea did and the market that he's expected to enjoy, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that he could get a 4-year deal at $25 million per. I really don't think that's crazy. I would have thought it was crazy at the start of the offseason, but seeing what Montas got, seeing what Kikuchi got, seeing now what Severino got, I think the market is telling you that these guys, if they are coming off good seasons, if you are expecting them to give you innings, if they have this stuff to maybe be a frontline starter for you, there is an absolute premium you have to pay to get those guys to sign. If Manaea gets a 3-year deal, which I think the range that the Mets would probably be most comfortable, I think $25 million is almost a given at this point. I think expect $75 million, and I wouldn't be shocked if he got 80. Now, that sounds crazy, right? Sean Manaea basically getting the same amount of money per year as his 2-year contract that he signed with the Mets, which was $27 million. $80 million divided by 3, you're talking about 26.6 and change. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but I think there's teams that might pay it. I really do, because getting Manaea, especially on a shorter term deal, that's going to be very attractive. How can I see Manaea coming back to the Mets, and would it be a 9-figure deal? I think the one scenario where Manaea comes back to the Mets at $100 million plus, so let's say he gets that 4-year, $100 million offer, and he brings it to the Mets. Maybe the Mets say, we'll do that, but we'll do it over 5. And now Manaea gets the same amount of guaranteed money, but the Mets bring the average annual value to a more respectable place. Or maybe it is $80 million over 3 years, but there's some deferrals kicked in, a heavy signing bonus, similar structure to Blake Snell, where you bring the average annual value down, maybe closer to 25, maybe closer to 23 million, depending on how much deferrals you're going to kick in. And he gets a fat signing bonus up front. So it'll be interesting. It'll be really interesting to see how the Mets try to fill out their rotation from here. Because, again, you look at Manaea, Eovaldi, Flaherty, Pivetta. All these guys could be looking at $20 million per season if Severino got it. All of them. You look at Walker Buehler. The Mets have showed some interest there. He could hit $20 million off of a down year because he was great in the playoffs and because of his track record. don't know if it quite gets there. I think he's looking at a very similar contract to Frankie Montas. I do. But you never know. Maybe there's more of a competition in Buehler's market based on his name. And to get him to sign, it's 2 years, 40 with an opt-out. Now, if that is the contract that gets Walker Buehler, because pitching is such a premium, I think I would sign it if I'm the Mets, because you're hoping and you're betting that you are going to be able to get the most out of Buehler with your pitching lab, where it's really a 1 year, $20 million deal. And there is no bad 1 year deals. Shane Bieber's coming off Tommy John surgery that he had early on in the season last year. You're probably not going to be able to have him pitch until well into the second half, but he's a premium pitcher. Now that he sees this market, though, as a premium pitcher, a former Cy Young, a guy that was unbelievable the start of last season. He looked like he was going to just completely dominate his contract year, and then he got hurt, needed TJ. Shane Bieber's a guy that I think looks at this contract and says, man, can I get a 2-year deal? Can I get a 3-year, $67 million deal with an opt-out for the second year? Can I get the Severino contract? Based on his track record and the success of guys coming off TJ, you never know. So this market has gotten wild. And I even think if you're looking to bring back Jose Quintana or get into the Charlie Morton market or Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, I think the starting point is the same amount that we saw last year that Sevy got, that Manaea got, that Gibson got, that Lynn got. I think the starting point is like $14 million, $15 million for those guys, but it's a 1-year deal. And so maybe the veteran approach is better because you don't have to stretch this out to too many years, where if you sign Jack Flaherty, it might be an inflated dollar amount and it might have to be 4 or 5 years. He's a young pitcher. So I think the Mets are going to get creative. And I think now the reported interest on Clay Holmes, and actually I thought Mike Soroka was to be a reliever. I read into that a little bit more. Apparently, the thought would be for Mike Soroka to get back to starting potentially if the Mets signed him. That, to me, shows a team that's trying to get creative to get around a market that's just insane. And so maybe you sign guys that had success last year as relievers, try to have them start, and that is, another flyer you take. Maybe you take, 4 flyers on guys and hope that 2 of them hit instead of getting surefire, bets because the contracts are just nuts. I have a creative signing that we're going to talk about in the final segment. I think it's very creative. And it's also one that Mets fans are either going to love or hate. And I would imagine more might hate it than love it. So that's where we're going to close the show in the next segment. Could which free agent come back to the Mets? That's your teaser. We talked about it in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, which is America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers, you're going to bet $5 and you'll get $150 if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL. It's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, give you live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And again, remember, make sure you get that first $5 bet correct, because when you visit FanDuel.com today, you're going to get started again. $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. It's all at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Stay today with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our next goal is to get to 12,000 subscribers. I appreciate all of you. Continue to subscribe. All right, so the Mets, they hit this marketplace now. They got a lot of money to spend because Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, those contracts fell off the Mets books. Would you want to bring one of them back on? Would you consider bringing back Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, and which one's more likely to come back? I think Justin Verlander has a great opportunity to re-sign with one of his 2 former teams. I don't think that it's going to be the Mets because he just had a cameo at the Mets. I don't think that there's much of an affinity to come back and pitch for the Mets. He did say he liked his time, but I just don't think that he's going to circle the wagons and come back, especially when the Astros likely want to bring him back. They would have loved it if he hit his innings amount and had gotten that club option to vest at $35 million, where they would have only had to pay half of it. The Mets would have paid the other half. Could they come to Verlander now and say, listen, we're still willing to pay half of that $35 million, right? We're still willing to go to that degree. We're still willing to give you $17.5, $18 million to come back on a 1-year deal. I think that's very realistic that he just heads back to Houston. Also, if he wants to, at the end of his career, have a little bit of a retirement tour, go back to Detroit, coming off their best season since Verlander was in his prime. With the reigning AL Cy Young, you go and you are maybe the number 2 to Skubal with a bunch of other young guys in that rotation. I think going back to Detroit is a great idea for Justin Verlander. Both Verlander and Scherzer have a mark that I bet they want to hit. There's only been 9 pitchers in MLB history that have hit 3,500 strikeouts, and each of them is within 100 strikeouts of getting there. So I think that's one extra incentive to keep pitching. I also think these guys just don't want to go out on injury-plagued down years. They're the type of pitchers I think that want the jersey ripped off their back when they really just don't have it anymore. You saw it with other guys, late in their careers, like a Pedro Martinez, where they're going to pitch until they can't anymore. I feel like these two guys fit that. So I think they will be back. I don't think Verlander is realistic to come back to the Mets. I don't even know if I'd call Scherzer realistic to come back either. But Scherzer's a more interesting one to have dialogue on. I don't think the Rangers are bringing him back. He could return to the Tigers, but I don't think he has the same place in his heart for Detroit that Justin Verlander would. The Nationals would be a good place to sort of finish out his career, and I think that is a distinct possibility. I'd even say maybe the favorites to sign him just because it makes so much sense for Washington because they would legitimately sell tickets for Max Scherzer starts. With that said, should the Mets consider it? Let's first go through his last season. Only made 9 starts. Not a good sign. Had back surgery last offseason. Then had a thumb injury that slowed his rehab process. Made 8 starts in June and July. Then had a shoulder injury that kept him out for nearly the rest of the season. Made 1 final start. So he had 9 starts overall. He pitched to a 3.95 ERA and 43 1/3 innings pitched. It's good. It's not great. Velocity was down to 92.5 miles per hour, and strikeouts were down. 2022 with the Mets, he averaged 94 on his fastball. He pitched to a 2.29 ERA over 145 1/3 innings. He was absolutely worth every penny that first year. But 2023, he pitched to a 3.77 ERA overall in 27 starts. But with the Mets, in 19 starts, he pitched to a 4.01 ERA before doing better with the Rangers, and he got hurt, came back in the playoffs. Didn't have a great impact on that World Series winning team, but did give them some innings in the postseason. Got a ring. Does Scherzer want to come back? This is what he told the Dallas Morning News in September. He said, when I'm out there, I've been able to compete. I look at things like my slider, which I went into the season wanting to fix, and it's been really good. I still see myself as able to compete and win. So, yeah, he's going to be back. Now, what about that slider? Last year, batters hit .214 against it, .333 slug. He had a whiff rate of 43.8% on his slider and 40% on his curveball. So he's still got good breaking pitches, right? Whiff rate on his fastball of 22% is actually in line with where it was in 2022 with the Mets. So, the characteristics of his pitches are still there. The velocity might be diminished, but this is a Hall of Fame pitcher. He can figure it out, diminished stuff, if he's healthy. Is he going to be Max Scherzer of old? The guy that was in contention for Cy Youngs every year, the guy that pitched great for the Mets in 2022? Not necessarily, but can Max Scherzer still pitch to a sub-4 ERA over volume? I think he can, and that's what you're looking for in these one-year bets that you're making in free agency. Look at the overall whiff rate on his pitches, 29.2%. That would have ranked in the upper third of the league. Chase rate of 36.4% is elite. That would have been atop the league when it comes to overall chase rate. Hard hit rate, average exit velocity, walk rate, we're all back in line with what he did in 2022. So I look at the data, and yes, the strikeouts were down, the velocity was down, but limited sample size. I still think Max Scherzer is a good enough starting pitcher that you can hand the ball to every 5th day. Do I think Max Scherzer, if healthy, would be better than Paul Blackburn? Yes. Tyler McGill? Yes. Jose Butto? I have hope on Jose Butto, but not enough to say he'd be better than a future Hall of Famer, even in his, age 40 season, I think, for Scherzer. I should have pulled the age when I was doing my prep here. Let's see exactly how old he is. Is it 40 or 41? He is already 40, born in 84. So here we're looking at age, well, he'll turn 41 in July. So age 40, age 41 season. Yeah, it's a risk to bring back Max Scherzer for sure, because you're not going to count on him to be durable and healthy. But I think there is a little bit of upside there because he's just such a great pitcher throughout his career. Is he going to give you 150 innings? No, but I think this is sort of partially the David Stearns model of trying to find undervalued pitchers. Also, I think this would be sort of in line with the Dodgers, the death by volume, right? You can never have enough pitching. You bring in Scherzer, and if it's a six-man rotation, if he's the sixth man in the six-man rotation because you ended up signing 4 starting pitchers this offseason, okay. And then you figure out roles for Blackburn, McGill, and Budo out of the bullpen. I know McGill has an option. Budo does not. So maybe Budo's in the bullpen. McGill's in AAA to start the year. I'd imagine Paul Blackburn does not have an option, but you can't have too much starting pitching. You can't. If it gets to a point where you do and you have too many mouths to feed and you have to try to float one of these guys on the market, maybe you do. There is no minor league option available for Blackburn. But again, who do you think is going to be better next year, Paul Blackburn or Max Scherzer? Maybe you believe in just age. Blackburn did look good in a Mets uniform. I'm not going to completely discredit him, but my whole point of this exercise is the Mets are going to get a little crazy here to fill out this rotation because they have to. They got to figure it out. They're going to have to maybe be, signing a guy that Mets fans aren't going to like when the deal is done, which is the same thing that we've seen from their last 3 signings in free agency. All of them, when it comes to starting pitchers, have been deals that Mets fans did not like upon signing. We did not like when Luis Severino got signed originally. Sean Manaea, same boat. Frankie Montas now, same boat. But you have to start to give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't know if this is realistic. I actually think it's unrealistic just because, not that the breakup was bad between the Mets and Scherzer, but I don't think it was great. Can I imagine Max Scherzer on the 2024 Mets holding up an OMG sign? Not necessarily. So I don't know if it's great for your clubhouse, even though I think Scherzer was really respected and really liked in that Mets clubhouse during his tenure here. Overall, I think it's more likely that we see the Mets bet on a Lance Lynn than a Max Scherzer, just because Lynn is more of a workhorse. At least lately, it feels like he's been a little bit more durable, though last year I think he had some knee troubles. But there has been some reporting going on that he's dropped like 20 pounds to try to protect his knees. So I think it might be less money for Lynn just because of the difference in name and maybe have a better chance to innings. I could potentially see either of those guys being these bets that fans aren't going to like, but they could prove to be really valuable pitchers. Overall, the entire point of this exercise is just to make it known here that the Mets are going to have to get creative, okay? Because as we talked about in the last segment, the cost for some of these starting pitchers is going to get crazy, and you might have to, look in different places than you expected to try to find value for your rotation. We'll see how it all breaks for the New York Mets. I wouldn't, again, expect Max Scherzer, but if they did sign him, I wouldn't be mad at it either, because they just have to find some arms in this market, and it's going to be tough to do that. It's going to be tough to find 2 more, but I'm sure David Stearns will land on a couple of deals that he likes. Of course, there's also the looming Juan Soto stuff. I imagine that this news is going to drop this weekend, so we'll be back at some point over the weekend, I think, to talk about Juan Soto wherever he lands. If there's some juicy rumors, I might give you a Saturday show, even if he doesn't sign on Friday night. But overall, we're going to continue to cover this thing until the decision is made. So make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. You can follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day. Now, for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports Today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.